Every March, the legends of drag racing gather to welcome the next group of drag pioneers into the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame. The stories are both funny and harrowing. If you love drag racing, don't touch the remote.
Bruton Smith bought the entire operation, the round track and the Bristol track, from Larry Carrier. And Bruton Smith didn't care anything about drag racing for all practical purposes, and he decided to just bulldozer the track under and make a great big parking lot. Jeff Byrd would have no part of that, and he insisted that the drag strip be completely remodeled. They pushed half of that mountain away that people used to sit on, and the original strip is around 13 feet below the present drag strip. And the present drag strip, let me tell you, is one of the finest in the world.
Jeff Byrd ran the Winston drag racing program for both IHRA and NHRA for many years. And if I had one particular word to describe Jeff, I would say innovative or creative. The man always was thinking outside the lines. His motto, exceed expectations. He lived to the highest degree. And I had to work very closely with Jeff, and I'd just give you a few examples of some of the things he did that were so innovative and creative. Jeff got very involved in the IHRA Awards Banquets, where we crowned the world champions. And it was nothing for us to stop the awards and suddenly play, let's make a deal. And he would give away prizes and everything to some of the racers. Or The Price is Right, and he would bring them up, and then we'd go on with the awards. Well, one particular year, for several years, the racers went to racers seminars, the track operators went to track operators meetings. The ladies didn't have a lot to do, so they started doing a ladies' day, and they would do a fashion show every year, and the ladies kind of liked that. Well, one year we were in Nashville, Tennessee, and they decided to send the ladies on a cruise down the river on a paddle boat and have a ladies' brunch. So there was no fashion show. So in the middle of the awards ceremony, with a live orchestra, by the way, that's how Jeff did things, he stopped and he said, I understand you ladies missed out on your fashion show this year, so we want to give you about a 10-minute fashion show right now. And these models came out in beautiful gowns and everything. One of them even had a lady's bathing suit on, but when they got out on the stage, you realized the models were IHRA officials dressed up as women. Now, how Jeff talked these guys into doing this, I don't know, but it absolutely brought the house down. Winston had a track improvement program. Most of it was spent on the national event facilities, fixing them up. But there was a drag strip outside of a small town in northern Ohio called LaRue, Ohio. It's got 2 traffic lights, maybe. Marion County International Raceway. The Guthrie family built that, Bill and Tom Guthrie. Well, they ran out of money. It was a nice drag strip, but they ran out of money and they didn't have a timing tower. They just had an old trailer there that served as a timing tower. So Bill came to me and he said, if there's any way Winston could help me out, I really need to build that timing tower. So I went to Jeff. Jeff said, yeah, I want you to send me a drawing of a tower that looks like a pack of Winston cigarettes. The top floor was a Winston lounge, the second floor is a timing deck, bottom floor was storage, it had restrooms and everything like that. This is that timing tower and the other signage that Jeff Byrd caused to happen at a weekly drag strip.
Our kids grew up doing drag racing. That's all these kids did. They went to drag races all the time. He did do NHRA and IHRA, so the year that Belt was born, Christian was 3, he was gone 43 of 52 weekends. So I was just used to being around. So if we were gonna see Daddy, we were gonna have to go on the road with him. I'm gonna admit something tonight I've never admitted in public before. Christian Byrd was conceived at my first drag race. It's the truth. It's the truth. Sorry about that. Sorry, Christian. Sorry to embarrass my children. Jeff didn't like recognition. He always wanted to give other people recognition. He never wanted to be recognized. But I can honestly tell you, with this group gathered here today, he would be so humbled and so honored that you guys chose to recognize him. So on behalf of our family, thank you, and God bless.
Our next inductee is the team of Jeep and Ronny Hampshire. the driver and the builder. They built their own cars, they drove their own cars, they tuned their own cars. But one of the most unusual things about these guys were they put their feet underneath the rear end housing. They're the only ones that ever did that, to my knowledge, and this car right here has that configuration, and it came out of Australia, but it was sold to the Australians from California. So it's a good possibility that they even built this car for them, because nobody else liked that configuration, putting your feet underneath the rear. It worked for them, but nobody else seemed to like it. It's an uncomfortable feeling, I think, to have the differential on top of your stomach instead of under your legs. But it didn't bother them. They won a lot of races in California. They were a great team, and of course they're retired now, and we'd like to welcome them into the Drag Racing Hall of Fame.
The best thing I ever did in my life is going drag racing. I'm around 13 years old, and my older brother, took us to Saugus, and we was both hooked. And I wouldn't trade it for nothing. And I want to thank Don Garlitz for all this, and everybody that voted for me to be here.
I want to thank all the people that invited me, Garland's family, and the honoree, the committee for inducting us. And I'd like to thank my family and my friends and everybody. And that's life.
The Lucas Oil International Drag Racing Hall of Fame induction ceremonies are being brought to you by EvapoRust, Super Safe Rust Remover, Custom Auto Sound, the originator of classic car OEM fit radios since 1977, Clamp Tight, the clamp making tool, and by Lucas Oil, made in America, sold to the world.
Our next inductee is Dean Moon. Now here's one of the true pioneers of the sport. When I opened my speed shop in 1956, Dean Moon is one of the first people that I contacted to be able to buy the Moon tanks and throttle linkage and all the breathers and different things that you had to have if you were a hot rodder. And Dean Moon had a wonderful catalog way back then when it wasn't fashionable. And when I opened this museum and had my first people out front there in 1983, it was Dean Moon who showed up personally with his truck and trailer with these cars loaded on it to be the first one to give us cars for the museum. He's passed away. The company belongs now to a Japanese company, believe it or not, but they're still in Santa Fe Springs, and they still make the same kind of parts that Dean made. He'd be proud of the job they're doing for him, and we'd like to welcome him into the Drag Racing Hall of Fame.
I feel very fortunate that we grew up in the 60s and 70s when hot rodding and racing was such a big deal and a lot of fun. And my dad, every weekend, had some sort of an event going on that we all had to go to, be it drag races or drag boats or car shows, Bonneville, Baja races, but we all went. And, you know, it was really a big part of our lives, and I think I was probably the envy of every boy in school because they wish they were in my shoes. I also would like to thank Shuginoma, who bought my parents' company when they passed away, and it's now called Moon Eyes USA, and his partner Chico, who have made it what it is today, and it far exceeded the dreams my father probably ever had for that company, and it's meant the world to us that they've always kept us part of the business happenings that are going on, and it's been very nice that they've carried it on.
Our next inductee into the Drag Racing Hall of Fame is Joe Shubik, better known as Gentleman Joe Shubik, and that comes from the days of the Harry Olds. This was a four-wheel drive, dual-engine Oldsmobile Toronado that Joe drove with a fire suit made to look like a tuxedo. He even had a top hat when he got into the thing. And of course, he had a big fire, and he quit doing that. But guys like me who raced know him for something quite different. He is the guy that had some of the finest aluminum heads for the 426 Hemi in the early 70s, and also was instrumental, along with Don Alderson, in designing the Milodon aluminum block, which was the first aluminum block for the 426 Hemi in drag racing. And this car had that block and set the record for NHRA at 247.25 miles per hour in 1973. And for that, I'll be forever grateful to Joe Shubik, because that engine was over 150 pounds lighter than the steel block.
The third definition that describes a gentleman is courteous, gracious man with a strong sense of honor. Joe was probably one of the hardest competitors when he was racing. He opened Lakewood Chassis and later became Lakewood Industries, and believe me, he was a competitor there and not a true gentleman at times. However, as time has passed, he has started to live up to that name.
I ran into a guy by the name of Joe Scarpelli, and he had a Chrysler engine, and I had a desire after I learned how to weld to build a chassis around it, and we were out there with a blown Chrysler engine in about 1957, 58, and we were winning races. And I decided, I think I'm going to go into the business of building dragster chassis. And I did.
2017 will mark the 4th year of the Pat Garlitz Award, which recognizes female contributions in motorsports, both from the driver's seat and behind the scenes. This year's honoree, Eileen Daniels, truly represents the spirit of the award.
But this award is very, very special to me. And I just want to tell you, Don, how much I appreciate it. And I've been around for a long time, been with NHRA for over 60 years, and I ain't done yet as long as they'll have me.
Our next inductees are Joe and Deli Wreaths. Joe Wreath has passed away, but Deli is still alive and with us. And their claim to fame is the fact that they had a speed shop in Southern California, and they made a few parts, but the most remarkable one was the blower drive for the 392 engine and the 671 blower. And here's one right on this little dragster. A very nice machine piece.
Before I get started, I just want to thank Ted Jones for giving me another little IHRA tidbit that all the men dress up as women. Sandy and I call that date night for the last 35 years. I did talk with Deli this week, and she gave me some notes. Actually, Mcclurg gave me these notes. First of all, she wanted to thank Don, Donna, Lisa, Allie, everybody there for putting this on, selection committee for doing this honor for her and Joe. It's well deserved, and that's for me. I mean, they definitely deserve it, and I go a long way back with Joe and Deli. As Joe Shubik said, that I was working the hot tank under Gary Slesher, and Gary Slesher was my crew chief when I won Indy in 1986 in the Joe Paisano car. So there's a lot of history there, and that's what this whole thing's always about. But she also wanted to congratulate all the honorees. Says she wished she could be there with all of you. It's an honor to be included in this fine group. Deli says you both, her and Joe, were fortunate to have the honor and be able to sponsor teams like McEwen and Rasner, Bud Rasner and the Aldred Coupe. Also the Radican Jackson Stearns Coupe. Ronny still shows the car at events. Pete Eastwood, who actually restored the Dunn Reith Rainbow car. Gordon Collette, George Boldoff, the Dunn Reith Funny Cars and Dragsters, Vance and Hunt, and many more.
Our next inductee is Belle Shrewsbury. He was an exhibition guy. He put on a show for the people. He didn't race against anybody, just like this rocket car. They never raced anybody. They just put on a show. But Bill was the king of the wheel standers in California. He had the one that I remember the most was the Knox Berry Farm little panel delivery truck. It was a cute little thing, and he could put that thing up on the rear wheels and go the entire quarter mile, never once having the front wheels down for steering.
I've been often told that I should probably write a book, and I could. I'm not sure it'd be worth the effort, but it'd be an interesting book. And a couple of chapters in that book would have to do with the guys that ran exhibition cars and drag racing. Some really interesting characters that came out of that whole segment of the sport. It was really the entertainment part of the sport. And a lot of them guys came from actually running race cars before they got into the exhibition part, and particularly the wheel standers. It really hit hard. And Belle Shrewsbury was the first guy that really was with a Hemi under glass. He didn't stay with that car very long, but Wild Bill, and the name Wild Bill, believe me, it fits. I mean, it's easy to call anybody named Bill Wild Bill. This one fits. Don't be fooled by the slight demeanor and the soft voice. Shrewsbury, he's a gorilla.
Wow, how can a little kid from Mansfield, Ohio be able to do all these things? I was so lucky to be able to do and have so much fun and go all over the world. I just had a great time. I don't think there's anybody in the world had more fun than me. I had more fun than the people that watched me. I had more fun doing the things that I did. I got to travel lots of places. You know, the car was very stupid. It would run all kind of places. I run circle tracks with it, only on the straightaway. I ran it at Monte Carlo. I ran Le Mans. I did all that before the race started. Valvoline sent me on a tour. I got to go all total 8 countries. I never would have got to do that from Mansfield, Ohio. And it's so much fun. I had so much fun doing it. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. And I thank you very much.
The Lucas Oil International Drag Racing Hall of Fame induction ceremonies are being brought to you by Dustless Blasting. It's the future of surface preparation. Steel rubber products, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping. Z-Max, the one product for your engine, transmission, and fuel system. And by Brothers Truck Parts, your #1 source for 1947 to 87 Chevy and GMC truck restoration.
Our next inductee is Larry Sutton. This is 2017, and here he is in 1970, Lions drag strip, the horrible transmission explosion that changed the face of drag racing and brought us the rear engine car. But I would like to call your attention to something about this young man at this point. The car has just exploded. It's a terrible thing. You can see one of the pieces going across the drag strip. He had the peace of mind to pick up a fire extinguisher in all that mayhem to come out to the roll cage that was tumbling down the drag strip with me in it, just in case there was a fire. He would have something to put the fire out with. There's not many people that could hold their composure to do something like that. And we would like to welcome Larry Sutton into the Drag Racing Hall of Fame.
I'm here to introduce a man whose name and career exemplifies the sport of drag racing. Larry Sutton started hanging out at Lions Drag Strip when he was only 13 years old. He worked the time slip booth for a while and ended up working all facets of the racetrack, including tech inspector, lane master, race director. And then at 16, they asked him to start the races. Now, you got to remember that this was so long ago, I mean, long time ago, that they gave him this flag and said, here, you stand out there in front of these guys, face them. Now, here's your big chance, don't blow it. The starting job was a position that he held at the track from 1959 until the track closed in 1972. After Lions closed, Larry and his late wife, Pam, worked all the legendary California tracks, Irwindale, Fremont, Orange County Raceway, and raised a family that was with them at all those racetracks. Standing on the starting line with his signature black Stetson hat and his pipe, he cast such an iconic figure that if you saw his silhouette, you would know who it was.
When I received the call from Donald, it was about the Hall of Fame nomination. It was a very emotional, as I said earlier, but it also was funny because there was only 3 of us in the emergency room, I'm sorry to say, at the accident at Lyons. Donald, myself, and I was holding a young gentleman that was injured in the explosion. But when Donald called me, I knew the voice. He didn't say, "This is Don Garlis." He said, "Larry Sutton?" I said, "Yes." He says, "I hear a rumor that you got half my foot in a pickle jar at your house." Of course I denied it. You know, I'm sorry, Don. But I'm getting older. And I don't need souvenirs anymore. So, Donald, I would like to return your foot to you, and I hope you enjoy it. It's been 40-some years, but it says right here, "Return to Don Garlis, March 16, 2017. And I also have one of your hat pins, son. So I would like to return this to you, and I hope you understand.
Thank you so much.
That's cute. Bob Mcclurg has spent most of his life as a wordsmith, and along the way developed a reputation as a well-respected drag racing photographer and technical writer. While he did participate as a racer early in his life, he's always been a journalist, and he wanted to stick with that. In addition to preparing editorial, photo articles, and many other types of technical information for magazines, including Hot Rod, Carcraft, Superstock, Popular Hot Ring, and a host of others, he's also authored several books, has worked for various racers and manufacturers, providing public relations for them.